Meeting of the Civic Affairs Committee. Starting from number 1, public forum, there is none. Number 2, apologies. We have apologies from Mayor Jules Raddick, Councillor Marie Lafiso and Councillor Houlihan for lateness. I'll move that they be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vandervis, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Confirmation of agenda. I move that the committee confirms the agenda without addition or alteration. Councillor Vandervis, seconded again. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Thank you. So, declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arose between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests they might have. Are there any changes or updates? Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Chair. I've been, for my sins, joined the board of the Christmas lunch. I will get the proper wording to the GSO. Others have dodged a bullet.
Any other changes or updates? If not, I will move that the committee amends the elected members' interest register and amends the proposed management plan for elected members' interest with that addition of Councillor Wiley's Christmas lunch involvement. Seconded Councillor Mayhem. Any discussion? Not, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Confirmation of minutes. So this is the meeting of Civic Affairs quite a while ago, 5th of September last year. I move that the committee confirms the public part of the minutes of the Civic Affairs Committee meeting held on the 5th of September 2023 as a correct record. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Vandervis again. I just keep looking that way. Perhaps I should shift the angle. Any discussion? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 6, Part A reports. So we have the Youth Council representatives here. Welcome, ladies. Please come to the table. We have Chairperson Melody Buckbeat and Deputy Chairperson Alice Johnston. So welcome along, and we look forward to your updated report. It's all yours.
Morena everyone. The Dunedin Youth Council is a body of rangatahi open to ages 12 to 18 that serves as both a representative body of Ōtepoti youth and as a facilitator of youth-based community events. The DYC has remained a significant avenue for the DCC to connect with the young people living in Ōtepoti as well as a facilitator of fantastic community events. This report provides an overview of our priorities for 2024 as well as detailing the major actions that the DYC has undertaken in the last 4 months.
Thank you. At the start of the year, the DYC came together for our first 2-day hui, which is held annually. We held the hui in February 2024, which served as a way for the second-year members and first-year members to build and strengthen our relationships. We also participated in a workshop which enabled us to identify some of the key challenges that the city's rangatahi are facing, brainstorm solutions and confirm our strategic goals for 2024, which are identified, followed by tackling racism, homophobia and bullying at school, better inter-school relationships, bus hub from the safety and wellbeing side, drunk driving and getting people home safe late at night. And so this is leading on to our major actions for the year. So we have the student-led safe spaces for Dunedin high schools. We have our late night bus services petition, Ōtepoti Youth Vision Rangatahi Survey, South Dunedin Futures Workshop, and the DYC podcast, Dunedin On Air.
For the student-led safe spaces in our high schools, the DYC delivered a letter to the Dunedin high schools regarding tackling racism, homophobia and bullying. Our goal was to use a collective voice to engage with schools represented by DYC members in order to encourage these schools to support the student body in creating student-led safe spaces in schools by writing a letter which was jointly signed by all DYC members and presented to the senior administration within the schools. We presented this letter to our respective high schools in May.
Our late night bus services petition. So the DYC created a petition for the ORC to establish a late night bus services and advertising campaign to encourage youth to use buses instead of drink driving or getting in vehicles with drink drivers. The petition is currently running on change.org and being promoted onto the DYC social media. So once it's complete, the DYC intend to deliver the petition to the Otago Regional Council.
Ōtepoti Youth Vision Rangatahi Survey. The DYC volunteered to collect surveys on behalf of the Ōtepoti Youth Vision at the South Dunedin Street Festival, Moana Nui and the Tairiho Theoi. The goal of the survey is to collect information anonymously by regarding the lived experience of Dunedin's youth. The information will be presented in a report and available to the public once complete. The Ōtepoti Youth Vision Partnership Group then aims to create an action plan informed by this data, which will support the Ōtepoti Youth Vision signatories to live up to the vision and values.
So the South Dunedin Futures Workshop. So the DCC has had an ongoing relationship with Ian Telfer and the South Dunedin Futures Project. So we have provided feedback several times throughout the last few years, with the most recent engagement in March of this year. Ian was interested in learning about the DYC's perspective on the adaptation approaches, which had recently been shared with the public as part of the South Dunedin Futures Expos hosted at the Edgar Centre. We played the Township Flood Challenge game with Ian, presented with adaptation cards in two groups. We arranged the adaptation cards in order of priority from our perspectives, and then we held a discussion about why we chose the interventions we chose.
The DYC, with the support of Otago Access Radio, hosts a youth-focused podcast. We record 2 podcasts back-to-back fortnightly on a Friday, which are then released weekly. We also allow guests to join our podcast, as this allows us to connect with the community and make closer connections to people. The podcast is an opportunity for members of the DYC to come together and kōrero about our day-to-day lives and provide our perspective on current events and hot topics.
So now going on to what we're looking forward to this year. So in the second half of 2024, the DYC aims to host a musical event which aligns with our goal of building better inter-school relationships. The Soundwave Youth Festival will be a music event where local high school bands and upcoming solo artists have an opportunity to perform in front of an audience. The event aims to provide a positive platform for rangatahi to establish and strengthen inter-school relationships in a fun and collaborative environment while celebrating talented young artists.
Feedback from our peers have highlighted that many young people don't know how to report the negative or unsafe experiences they have had at the bus hub as a result. We are also in the process of coordinating a meeting with the Otago Regional Council to discuss our thoughts and ideas regarding safety at the bus hub. Our goal is to work with the ORC to empower young people to speak up if they witness inappropriate or unsafe behaviour at the bus hub or on the bus services. We aim to do this by raising awareness on when, where and how to report incidents. We will continue to host our podcast throughout the remainder of the year. Wonderful
And very succinct. Thank you for your report, and thank you very much for the great work that you do as a committee as well. And obviously you guys as the leaders. We have a number of questions for you. You happy to take questions? Great. It won't be an interrogation, I promise you. First up, Councillor Mayhem.
Oh, I just wanted to flag with you. Did you see Kara Wallace from Kaikoura Valley won the Rockfest competition on the weekend? She'd be a great person to have at your Soundwave event. I love that idea. And you said you gathered information at the South Dunedin Festival, Moana Nui, and there was one other one I missed that you said.
The Tairi Youth Festival.
And one more question. When do you think you'll be correlating that information? I'm very interested. Or will it come out in your next report to us about your visions and goals?
I believe we'll have that one at a later date, because it's not under our control.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I've got a few questions. First of all, continuing on with Soundwave, where is it going to be? I didn't catch whether you said it.
We haven't completely decided on a venue yet. It's in the works at the moment.
Awesome. In terms of the dealings with the ORC, you're mostly around buses, and I realise that you're in the process of gathering the signatures and for the petition, etc. But I'm also assuming that the ORC knows that that's what you're up to. So I'm wondering whether you have a good relationship, whether they're open to discussions, whether they're welcoming the discussions.
We're very lucky to have our amazing supervisor, Jay, who has close connections with the ORC and is communicating with them.
And my last question is DYC having any representation at Festival for the Future later in the year?
Do you elaborate a little bit more? Sorry.
Festival for the Future taking place in July in Wellington ostensibly for up-and-coming leaders.
No.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, guys. Great presentation. You're very busy, obviously. Number of my questions have been asked, but I'll ask this one around the sad subject of racism and homophobia in schools. A two-part question. Is that a significant problem, and is your safe spaces sort of connected to that? Are they interlinked?
Yep, so the safe spaces create a space for students to come. They're led by us. Students to come and seek help if they don't feel comfortable going to teachers about it, or if they feel as though they're, alone in school and they need to create a connection with a senior student. But yeah, it is mainly to create a safe space where they won't be victim to those issues.
And the first part, your feeling is it's quite a significant issue in schools?
Yes, 100%.
And you mentioned, I've just written here, about the drink driving issue. Is the drink driving issue more of a goal by you to avoid people like Rangatahi going in cars that have got drink drivers rather than that there's a drink driving problem itself, or is it a double problem?
We have a DYCer who's very passionate about it, and he would say, I think that it's to do with the drivers, but like not getting in the vehicle and being drunk and driving. I'd say in that sense, if that's when we're tackling, that's what we're wanting to tackle. When that's tackled, then we'll avoid people getting in the car with drink drivers. So it kind of goes hand in hand in a way.
And sorry to still relate to alcohol, and this goes to, is it Soundway or Southway? Soundway. We've just had the annual plan process around live venues in the city, and the suggestion from them is there's a lack of places for youth to play music and perform it, and particularly alcohol-free venues. Is that, and you're both nodding, so you probably answered the question I'm going to ask. So there is an issue with venues?
Definitely, yeah.
Have you got a solution for us?
Yeah, I mean, Te Whare Orokotia was here last week speaking about that, so I think that would definitely allow us to already have a venue available. That's probably a really great one that, yeah, we're still looking. So, I mean, I guess that could say that there's an issue in finding a venue. But yeah, that's all good.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you and good morning. Can you just elaborate on the bus hub and the safety issues around that, please?
So if it's not well known to you guys, the bus hub is a very popular place for some teenagers to congregate because it's right in the middle. And there's always transport to and from there. And so with that, you get a lot of particularly teenagers who become quite aggressive and there have been like multiple fights there. It's just not, if you're walking down there as a teenage girl or a teenage boy, sort of just, you shouldn't have to, but you sort of have to keep looking around to see who's there, see what's going on and what kind of dangers you're around, because even though the police station is there, it doesn't really stop some teenagers from acting out, and it's towards adults as well.
Are you, when you speak to the ORC, are you going to highlight that issue with every punctuation mark you can put with it? They built the bus hub, they designed it, they implemented it, and yet they don't seem to have supported it as well as they could have. And I think, are you going to be able to articulate the issues that the students are facing?
We're already in touch with ORC at the moment, and there's definitely a lot. It's gone a far way. Like, there's definitely a lot of improvement from this far year. So yeah, I think it's definitely looking like it's still an issue, and that's why we're still doing something about it. It's also just seen as like a meeting spot in general, so that causes a lot of issues for people, like what Melody said, like teenagers like being harmed or like saying in different ways. I think the ORC are very aware that it is an issue, and some of the things they're hoping to do is like put posters on the buses, and so I think there's definitely improvement going on, which is really good.
And the impression I get, and I've had feedback from parents, are telling me that they're telling their sons and daughters not to go to the bus hub, but to get the bus at another location. So I noticed the exchange area is a lot more crowded or busier than what it generally was previously. The parents are generally telling me that they won't recommend their sons or daughters to go to the bus hub. Are you hearing similar stories where students will boycott the bus hub to go to another bus stop?
Yes, that's definitely an issue. We've definitely heard heaps of our DYCers wouldn't go to the bus hub because, they'd try and find another place they can go instead of the bus hub, avoiding it, Okay.
And just to carry on from that, those questions, what would make you feel safer at the bus hub? Is there anything that either yourselves or your committee have in terms of, shall we say, some sort of solution or at least an improvement by way of trying to reduce that sort of harm that's happening?
I think at the beginning of the year there was quite the improvement because there were sort of security guards, but they're temporary. And that sort of, when I would walk through, it would make me feel a lot more comfortable knowing that if something were to happen, there was someone on the lookout and someone that I could go to that could be a trusted adult.
So basically, if there was security there all the time, you think that would make a big difference?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Melody and Alice, for coming in. Most of my questions have been asked and answered, but I do have one for you, and that is, I found it really valuable, as other colleagues did, in being invited to come and to a youth council meeting. Are you planning to do that again, and when?
So we have multiple meetings coming forward where we have invited councillors to come. So yes, there will be more coming.
And how important is that in terms of understanding what your concerns are, and for councillors to understand how we can help?
I think it's incredibly important that you guys can come and make a connection with us as Otipoti Rangatira. And I think just being able to, even if you're just coming to listen in on what we talk about, at least if you know that the issues that we've raised are ongoing and that everyone in our youth council can agree on them, then maybe they can be raised with you guys.
And also, I just wanted to ask you, how many of your council members are returning? I know you've got some new members, that's great, but I know there's a little bit of a turnover with people leaving school. So what's the ratio at the moment?
We definitely have more new people, which is really great. And we have, how many? I'm approximately 5 or 6 of ones that have gone through from last year. And yeah, majority are first years, which is really great, yeah.
Fresh eyes and well supported by Jay and Dr. Mai Tamami. Thank you.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thanks for the presentation. I'm just going to ask you about the late bus. So I think a lot of buses finish around about 10:30, would that be about right? And are you looking for like a midnight bus or something like that?
Yeah, so on our petition we've outlined the dates from around 12 a.m. to 3 a.m. Just so those are sort of like the peak hours where people are finishing up in town.
Did anybody get you to the ORC's long-term plan submissions? Did you manage to get something in there?
Not that I'm aware of.
And my other question is, has either DCC or ORC arranged any meetings with you and the police over the bus hub, and whether or not the police could have a role to enforcing law and order?
We haven't from the DYC, from out of, I think, oh my gosh, I forgot the name, but there was another committee meeting I was on, and yes, thank you, the Social Wellbeing Committee, and they were in there and we were talking about it, so that was really good. We had a police officer in, but I think, yeah, that would be great. We'd love to get that for the DYC, so maybe it's something we think about, yeah.
And has there been any official police response as their intentions to do anything or not, even to that committee?
Not towards us.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, kia ora, Melody and Alice. I just want to ask you a question again about the petition to the ORC. Would you like all of the DCC councillors, if they so feel, to sign the petition as well?
That would be amazing.
So would you be able to email, I guess, to these guys and they can send it to us? Because I think we'd be really happy to support that. I was the mother of a school pupil as well, and I know that the bus hub, and I know the late night driving challenges that you have as well. So following on from Councillor O'Malley, what time do the buses actually stop at the bus hub?
I don't use them, so I'm not going to be honest, I don't really know. Do you know, Melody?
I also don't use buses, but I would say probably around 10:30, as you said.
Thank you.
Councillor Benson Pope.
Thank you. 2 questions about the bus hub still. I mean, it's certainly a bit counterintuitive given the location that the police aren't more visible, shall we say. And I'll just encourage you to, thanks for your submission, I'll encourage you to make representations through your committees to the police directly, and also to ask for DCC support for that end. But the other question is about the Safe Space Initiative, and compliments on that. I think that's great. That aside though, I would have thought that schools themselves would acknowledge a considerable responsibility to make sure that there was a safe space in each school. Without naming schools, how's their performance?
As for safe spaces, we know that Taieri College is already, they already have a safe space, so we can see that it's already a really good initiative. So they've already gotten onto that. I think it would really benefit any school, and yes, I agree. I think it definitely is a school's responsibility. This is a way in which we can see that it could really help students, so like the schools could hop onto this in a way to help the mental health of their students. It's okay.
Just jumping onto that, I think a lot of it flies under the radar of teachers and stuff, so I know that a lot of initiatives in school are run by staff members, which can be quite intimidating to students, and it's sort of like a sense of being, not popular enough to go hang out with other students, that they might have to hang out with some teachers, which isn't too fun, which is why I've sort of done the student-led safe spaces. And I think a lot of like racism, homophobia and bullying is definitely talked about in schools, but as I said, a lot of it goes under the radar, and kids find ways.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. Just following on from the safe spaces, so it was May, like this month you've just delivered the letter. So have you asked the schools to come back to you whether they're going to have a safe space, that they're going to have it in place? I mean, you've mentioned that Tyra, you've already got one. But have you asked for them to reply back to you so then you kind of know which schools are listening and taking your idea up?
I think with a lot of the schools, they're waiting to talk to each other about them. So I know that if they have board meetings and such, it has to go through them as well, or the Board of Trustees, and then the principals of each schools, I believe, are coming together. But we have asked for a response to that.
That's great. And I was just interested in your comment about the drink driving or getting in cars with people who've been drinking. As a mother of teenagers, I'm quite surprised that that's still happening. Do you think it's in pockets, or do you think it's across all schools, or do you think it's more of a... I know when my teenage son is in the rural area, there's more tendency for that, or do you think it is really widespread? Because I am quite surprised that it's obviously... You obviously think it's quite bad.
From what we know, it's pretty widespread. Yeah, it's an issue everywhere, and yeah, it's definitely still reoccurring in places like rural and urban, yeah.
Councillor Mayhem.
Following on from that about drink driving and buses, would you believe I was a teenager once, and 35 years ago there was a midnight bus that would run from Dunedin all the way to Palmerston North, because Palmerston South. Wow. I mean, you know, north of Dunedin, the other Palmerston, because I grew up out in the country, and I know, because I had friends in Tyree, that there was a bus that ran out there too. So that was 35 years ago on a Friday and a Saturday night. You could take that argument to Regional Council. We've gone backwards.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Don't take me back to my history of night buses in London, please. Guys, I've just looked at your Facebook and your Insta, and forgive me, I'm not on TikTok. So, so first question: are you on TikTok?
No.
What a relief! I suddenly feel younger. And I've just going to Councillor Barker's question. So, just for people around the table, the petition is the top thing on the Facebook page at the moment, so you can sign it there. So the question is, who oversees your social medias? Because
Jay and my.
I'll probably speak to you about it after. But it's good. Thanks.
We also have a lovely social media team on the DYC, so they run that as well. Yeah.
Well, we've exhausted questions, and there were a lot of them, which means there's obviously a lot of interest. Thank you both, Ms Buckby and Ms Johnston, for coming along and presenting to us today, and keep up the good work. We very much do appreciate what you do and coming and talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I move that the committee notes the report from the Youth Council. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mayhem, thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Gary.
I would just encourage colleagues to attend the DYC meetings when invited. It's definitely a window into the thoughts and concerns of our young people, and attendance hasn't been all that high in the past, so I'd really encourage you to accept those invitations and go along.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. I just, around the safety issue at the bus hub, I would hope as a result of the representations now that the city can actually, either yourself or staff, could make representations to the police. I think there are a lot of general behavioural issues where the police performance is, shall we say, wanting, he said charitably. And it is completely counterintuitive that a location right next door to the main station, which is always staffed, should be as problematic as it is. And I think a poor reflection on their wider on-street presence.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 7, actions from resolutions of Civic Affairs Committee meetings. Mr. West is going to speak to this.
I'm happy to take questions. I think it's fairly explanatory.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any questions? Councillor Lucas.
I was just surprised that, I mean, these resolutions were about 8 months ago and it doesn't seem that anything's progressed on them. I would have thought some things would have been relatively straightforward. I'm looking at my colleague, things like the jeweller to make new links and things like that.
So some of them have progressed, Councillor. I've had several conversations with former Mayor Hawkins around the photographer, and I think we're getting closer. Claire Ms. Sullivan and I met with a jeweller 2 weeks ago, with the Mayor, and the chains have been adjusted, so that's one half, and they're busy making the new link. And the only one I don't have a real update on is the Honours Board. Do you have an update on that one?
We're just negotiating with property to get access so that we can update the Honours Board.
Yep.
If there's no further questions, I'll move that the committee notes the open actions from resolutions of Civic Affairs Committee meetings. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Houlihan. Any discussion? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And that's carried. Thank you. So item 8, Civic Affairs Committee Forward Work Programme.
Again, I'm happy to take questions.
Questions, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you. And probably to Mr. West, and goes back to the Deputy Mayor's comments around, I think it was 8 months ago this committee met, and to me there's three, but certainly two very important issues on here that now are on hold. That's a review of the standing orders, which was promised in the last triennium, and the review of the Code of Conduct, and it's really disappointing to read that there's going to be no progress in those. And I'll sort of include the elected member gift policy, but the first two are far more important in my mind. And I am quite perplexed 8 months down the line that this is the only update.
So I think the CEO, and I'm looking at her, she's sitting over in the corner, made a comment at the last committee round to say that it's due to workload, Councillor, and yes, we'll get to it when we have the capacity to do so.
Councillor Gilbert.
Asked and answered, although I'm percolating another one.
Councillor O'Malley.
I'm not sure, it's not really in here, but it's the community boards were coming and presenting here as a mechanism of communicating with the council, and I certainly know one chair of one community board who's raised his concern that the meetings have actually gone down because of this arrangement, because they've only had one. What's the forward work program on having them in more often?
So, yeah, quite simply, it was only this meeting that they were removed because they've just recently presented an annual plan. And again, it was just I suppose, a timing thing, as well as it would just be repetition a week later, really. And so that will be reinstated at the next Civic Affairs meeting. And Mr. Sims emailed me yesterday wanting to find out what was going on there, and he's quite comfortable with the fact that there was a hold here today, but in future we'll be seeing the boards again, and potentially more than even two at a time, but we haven't quite figured that out yet.
Is there any, because the previous method of meeting was much more informal, you know, in the Otara room with the councillors and then all the boards and the chairs, and there's some, well, there's certainly desire again from Alistair Morrison. I can't speak for any other chair, but he seemed to think it was fairly universal. Is there any intention in bringing that back? Because it is a different relationship. And
I can get that, and that was, for some reason, that meeting had dropped out of the regular cycle, and Mr. Morrison's been advised that it's been put back in. But again, that is informal, and it's not all councillors. It's just the councillor representative from the board, so that they serve slightly different purposes.
Councillor Gary.
This may have the same answer as Mr. West just gave, but in regards to the external organisations, that work that's underway, that's my concern is around the time that's taking, because that was raised in the last triennium, and I wonder if there's any time frame on that. I don't see any there. Is that a workload issue as well, Mr. West?
Yes, it is. It's actually quite a big piece of work, believe it or not. And I've been meeting with Miss Sullivan, and we've been starting to work through it, but it's actually quite complex. So really it's finding the time in the diaries to get through it, but we'll hopefully be able to give an update in August.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayhem.
Just the first item on the forward work programme, LGNZ, AGM and remits. So I don't know when the next Civic Affairs meeting will be, but there is the AGM in June, July?
The AGM's in August. This was for any councils, other councils that sought to get support from this council. If the timing works before the next, but it's not likely that they will, because they have to be in June and the AGM is in August. So this committee isn't meeting till August. So it's we haven't received any requests from other councils for support yet.
And if we're putting a remit to the AGM, Claire, before another meeting, will we just circulate that in an email?
Yep. Yes, we can report on it to council on the council's forward work programme.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I think I've worked out my way of asking the question. So going back to the review of the standing orders and codes of conduct, and I hear the reply of it's a workload issue. Is there any indication or vision as to when the reviews might be able to get slotted in?
We don't at this stage, but again, we'll carry on talking about it. We'll try and get an understanding of that and be able to report back to the committee as soon as we can.
Councillor O'Malley.
Just going back to the LGNZ remits and rules, I note that other councils annually decide whether they're going to be in LGNZ or not. When is our renewal, and who makes the decision as whether we will or will not remain? I don't know. That's an open question to anybody who can answer it.
So the practice of this council hasn't been annual review, and so the subscription came in recently. I checked with the mayor if he wanted me to pay it, and it was paid. So that would be, if this council wishes to take a different view, something would need to come to council for discussion.
So the position at the moment then is there is no review, and it goes to the decision of the mayor to renew. Is that what
I sought guidance from him when I got the bill, and then paid it following that.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. The place-based groups, and it says information on the role of place-based groups in an update report to August. Is that going to dovetail in with the grants review in terms of place-based groups? Because primarily, well, a lot of their funding is from grants.
I can't answer that exactly. We've just been having a conversation with Councillor Acklin about how we can get more regular reporting from place-based groups. That's kind of where we're at the moment. How that dovetails into the timing around the grants review, I can't answer it, but it's certainly a start for the committee to start getting some reports.
So is that what the activities report refers to when it says information on various governance activities for the November meeting? I wasn't sure what actually that referred to.
Yeah, so it's more around an understanding, because the question came from an understanding from a couple of councils in terms of they do great work, but we don't know what it is. So it's getting some visibility for the groups, and the possibility is that you might hear from one or two of the groups at a time, but initially there'll be an update report overall on what the activities are, and then potentially similar to the community boards, the groups themselves coming and attending and giving a briefing.
If there's no further questions, I will move that the committee notes the Civic Affairs Committee Forward Work Programme. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Malley, any discussion? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, I just want to say something briefly because I can say it. I got this paper, and to me, it speaks to the fact we have way too many committees. This is 33 pages, 22 pages are administrators. That's 11 pages, largely telling us that things we're going to do aren't getting done. And I look back, it's 8 months ago we had this committee meeting. It was 36 pages. And again, 22 pages of administrative information. So, and there's nothing on this in this committee that couldn't be absorbed elsewhere. And to be honest, I think the DYC, who are amazing, should be presenting to a committee that has Mana Whenua reps on it, actually. So I just want to just highlight the fact that we are sitting here 8 months down the line, largely with 11 pages of information telling us stuff we were promised that's going to be done isn't being done. Thank you.
Thank you for your view on that. Councillor O'Malley.
I just want to touch on the review of standing orders, as I remember sort of how we got into this position. At the end of the first training, I was struck and was being asked, what should we do in the next induction? And I said, so I don't know if I caused this or if other people were saying at the same time, that it's unusual for a council for new councillors to take on the standing orders when they haven't been to yet a single council meeting. So I had requested that we keep the standing orders for the previous council for 1 year and then adopt them in the end of the first year of that triennium. And it hasn't happened, so we're actually dealing with the standing orders that were taken under Mayor Cull, because we didn't do them under Mayor Hawkins. And and we haven't done them again now. And I guess my feeling with standing orders and the review was, I thought it was, for us to do the review and actually go through the standing orders. I just wanted to touch on two places whether we needed to expand the section that we all love to quote from as to the behaviour in the chamber, whether we wanted to remove or take anything from it. And the other one was, and we've kind of resolved it now with workshops, but the ability to suspend standing orders in the middle of a meeting for the purpose of discussion. It was for when we do submissions and other such things. And that was basically the two things that I just wanted looked at, but the rest of the standing orders I wasn't particularly worried about one way or the other. And I kind of figured if we were all in a room and put an afternoon aside and went from cover to cover, we'd probably identify the 3 or 4 things that we looked at. And then I would imagine that we could knock it off fairly quickly, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Item number 9, Civic Affairs Activity Report for the period until 30th of April 2024. Some comment?
Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Well, no questions. I'll move that the committee notes the Civic Affairs Activity Report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lucas, any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? And that's carried. Item 10, items for consideration by the Chair. Councillor O'Malley.
I wonder if we could consider getting the councillors together to work on standing orders with staff assistance. If you could check into that, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Anything else? If not, I will declare the meeting closed at 10:43. Thank you. We'll take a 10-minute break before we start the next committee meeting. Thank you.
Everybody who's going to be here, looks like. Okay, so we'll start now. Let's get going. I'll start with open with a meeting with a karakia timatanga. Excuse me, my pronunciation is a little bit rusty, but I'll do my best. Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawātia mai te hininaro, whakarate mai te tinana, kia I ngā mahi e. Settle the spirit, clear the mind, prepare the body to achieve what needs to be achieved. Yes. Right, for public forum, we haven't got anyone who's come forward for public forum today. We do have 2 apologies. We have the Mayor and Councillor Lafiso. Is there a seconder for this to note the apologies, please? And I've got Councillor Lucas, thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Aye. Carried, and nobody against. Thank you. The motion is carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I move that the committee confirms the agenda without addition or alteration. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ackland. Now, any discussion on that at all? No. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Okay, declarations of interest. Does anyone have an update to their register of interest? No changes. Okay, I move that the committee notes the elected members' interest register and confirms the proposed management plan for elected members' interests. Is there a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lucas. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Confirmation of minutes. Customer and Regulatory Committee meeting 12 September 2023. I move that the committee confirms the minutes of this meeting. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wiley, thank you. I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Anyone against? Motion's carried. Customer and Regulatory Committee Forward Work Programme. We've got some staff who are coming forward. Are they here? Lovely. Mr. Henderson, thank you. Do you wish to speak to your report?
Happy to take as read, thank you.
Thank you. Lovely. And you're happy to take questions?
Yes.
Great. Right. Are there any questions for the Forward Work Programme? Thank you, Councillor Gary.
No, I was ahead of myself, thank you.
No? Okay. No questions? All right. Yes, Councillor Benson-Pope. Lovely.
Thank you. Just a question in relation to the street activities, trading in public places, I guess. Has been much of a influx of interest in use of the new George Street spaces by hospitality businesses?
I'm sorry, Councillor, I don't have that information. I can try and find that out, though. Thank you.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Right, so I'll note that the Customer and Regulatory Committee Forward Work Programme is for noting. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Malley, thank you. Any speakers? No speakers? All right. Lovely, thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? I declare the motion carried. Right, we've got an update on animal services education sessions, and we'll welcome Mr. Henderson is staying up there. Thank you very much. And we've got Ms. McGill, our Manager for Compliance Solutions. Thank you very much. And it looks like we've also got Anne Gray. Lovely, thank you. Right, are you happy to take questions?
Yes, very happy.
And do you want to speak to the report first, or you move straight in, or anything you'd like to add?
I'm happy to take it as read, thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much. Would anyone like to have any questions? Councillor Gary?
Thank you. I had a question around the free dog education sessions and your intent to widen that. I wondered if any consideration had been given to giving those sessions to the likes of Delta, where their people go out into people's property to change meters and so forth and encounter dogs.
Through the chair, yes, we already provide that service.
Yes, Councillor Wetherill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions. On page 41, 10.2, it mentions about small breeds of dogs. Oh, I've jumped ahead. Oh, wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else have any further questions? All right. Okay, so I'll move that we note the update on the Animal Services Education sessions. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ackland, thank you. Okay, anyone want to speak on that? No? Yes? Who have we got? Councillor Gary, lovely, thank you.
I just want to acknowledge the staff's work in this area. I'm aware particularly of the education in schools and how important that is. I can remember, I have a long memory and remember some horrendous attacks on children some years ago now. And this is in a national sense. And the work of our local staff in this area is so important in giving children confidence to interact with dogs. It's also really important for people who in the line of work go out to do their job and encounter dogs that are aggressive and potentially likely to cause them harm. So very valuable work, preventative work, and I know that sometimes the staff themselves are in the line of harm and have been. So I just wanted to commend our staff for the work they're doing in this area and how important it is because it's proactive and preventative.
Thank you, Councillor Gary. Any other speakers? I'd like to add to that too, because I 100% agree with that. I thought this was an extremely proactive example of council going out, meeting the people in our community and doing some really good work around showing, giving examples of and letting kids being around the dogs show them how to be safe and different examples of things to do if a situation did become awkward for them when they're out and about. I think that's really proactive and excellent. So thank you so much. That's wonderful. And I'd like to move that report, please. All those in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Okay, we get to the review of the dog control bylaw and dog control policy. And once again, I'd like to welcome back Mr. Henderson, thank you, and Ms. McGill and Mrs. Gray, thank you very much. All right, do you wish to speak to this report?
Yes, I would like to.
Lovely,
please.
thanks, good.
I just want to reiterate that mostly the bylaw and the policy are currently working very well. The review has been very thorough. We've looked at best practice across the country and looked at a lot of other bylaws. The review is aimed at making it clearer, the bylaw and the policy clearer, and removing any confusion that we've come across over the last 10 years, and also providing explanatory notes, so hopefully that helps the public when they're reading it. And the proposed changes are looking at improving recreational areas for dog users, dogs and their owners, and also minimising risks to the public. So that you'll see that there's two areas that we've focused on there. The interactive maps are going to be a guide only, and so that they have been removed from the bylaw itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Now you're all happy to take questions? And there are some questions. There's quite a few all of a sudden. All right. Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. In item somewhere, you mentioned the requiring dogs to be on a leash in the coastal dune area. Does that include the beach?
No, not unless there's a wildlife within 20 metres.
So is there no possibility for misunderstanding of where it's required the dog is leashed?
all of the beaches that are in the schedule advise you whether they can be on leash or off leash. Sorry.
Just concerned about the margin between the beach and the dune area. If you take Tomahawk, for example. So the dogs are, sorry. Can you explain to me what happens if you've got a dog you're exercising on Tomahawk Beach, and it runs into the dunes, or it runs from the dunes without a leash onto the beach?
Under the Act and the bylaw, the dog must always be under control. So there are going to be times when the dog will head off towards the dunes. The expectation is that the dog owner will call it back so that it's not in the dunes and can't be seen what activity what's going on in the dunes. This is in support of Doc that we've spoken to. There's always going to be times when dogs just chase off, but the idea is that you have your dog under control, so you should be able to retrieve it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. A couple of things. First up, I'm assuming it's just a rounding error in number 16 that the 1% that weren't dog owners and that were neither dog owners or not dog owners is just a rounding error. But my actual question is around number 24, and you mentioned it just before about improving opportunities for the recreational needs of dogs and their owners. Can you just expand a little bit on what you mean by that?
So we did informal discussions with the public and dog owners, and there's been some feedback around particular parts of the city where there's no recreational areas for recreational activities for dogs, for example, at the far end of the peninsula. So we've tried to look for areas that the dogs can be let off leash, but that's what the intention is.
So I lived in Wellington briefly, so I still refer to them as woof-woof roughs, which is what the Wellington Council calls dog parks. So that's roughly what we're talking, an enclosed area where the dog can get off. Maybe there's something to jump on and climb over, or just simply a paddock that they can run in.
It's actually a variety of areas. The areas that we've listed in the report and in the special considered procedure, where we've looked at beaches as well as other green areas.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervis.
On page 120, neutering of dogs, it says that a council may require the owner of any dog, being a dog that on a number of occasions is not being kept under control, to have the dog neutered or spayed, whether or not the owner of the dog has been convicted of an offence against section 53 of the Act. First question is, what is the number of occasions that it has to be not kept under control, to be clear?
I think we'd have to take every situation into context, and that would be the staff advising whether they thought that dog needed to be neutered because of the action. So, you may have a dog that's a male that's quite aggressive, and it may not be an act itself, but performing an aggressive behaviour. So I think we can't always say it's going to be twice, 1, 3. It has to be on each individual situation.
So in fact there is no minimum number where the council may require the owner of a dog, as long as it's more than one, really.
Yes.
Given that a dog owner who has not kept a dog under control cannot know, and in your opening remarks you said you wanted to make it clear and for people to know where they stand with this, but given that this 5.15.1 really doesn't give dog owners any idea of what or when this power might be taken into account, would it not be possible to get something put in here to explain that it would have to be a fairly severe kind of aggressive dog or something like that, in order to give dog owners some comfort that if they take their dog owner out a couple of times and it's not kept on a lead, council can come along and neuter it?
We'd be happy to look at an explanatory note to make it clearer.
And the last question on this is the council may require the owner to have the dog neutered or spayed. Who pays for it?
The dog owner, unless we do have an opportunity for people with a community services card, we will pay for it for free under that service.
If it's the intention that the council may require a dog owner to be spayed or neutered, shouldn't this also say, you know, at the dog owner's expense?
Dog owners, I think you mean the dog.
Sorry, just a Freudian slip on my part, having felt a bit that way myself around here from time to time. Should it not actually say, though, at the owner's expense, if that's the usual situation?
Yeah, we can add that into the explanatory note.
Councillor Gary.
I was curious around process, and it was in regards to page 58, and there are several beach reserve sites on the peninsula mentioned there, and in brackets it talks about the shared path. So great to see that that's been accounted for and that people can walk their dogs on a leash on the shared path. Was that done, did that need to be done through, I don't recall that coming to the bylaw. I'm assuming that was able to be clarified without having to go through a bylaw hearing or review. Page 58. Because it used to be, if I recall correctly, that people were not allowed to walk their dogs through the beach reserve.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find the section. Yes, in the original bylaw, the current bylaw, it was prohibited, and we're wanting to allow that for safety reasons.
This is the change that you're proposing. Great, excellent. And my next question is related to that because because on the perimeter of the city, on the outer areas of the city, and this is an example but not the only one, how do you enforce that? Because that has been a problem in the past. It's a bit of a free fire zone, really. And how do you prevent people letting their dogs off to go down on the beach, which is adjacent in any of these examples or similar?
The officers do patrol those areas and we respond to requests for service, but we can't be there all the time, obviously, but we do educate is the big thing for us. And if we get a complaint, we will speak to the dog owner involved.
Oh, that's good. Good to know enforcement's done. So just a subsequent question around that, education through kind of local channels, presumably?
We'd use social media and local channels, but we've also got signage, clear signage as well.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. I've got several questions. The Caledonian, was that Athletics Otago request asking that dogs be not permitted at all at the Kelly?
Yes, that's correct. We got very strong feedback and good reasons for that.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. I wonder about the closing date. You've got midnight on Friday the 19th. I wonder whether we do midnight on a Sunday, just that people have got the weekend to put their submissions in. That's on page 70.
Yes, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Thank you. On the old bylaw on page 117, you talk, there's quite a bit about provision of shelter, but that's not in the new bylaw. Is that, it's 5.5 under the old bylaw, shelter for dogs, but that section's not in the new one?
It's actually referred to in the Act, so we refer back to that if we need to.
And my last question is in relation to basketball courts and playgrounds, where we talk about, because a lot of, obviously now our playgrounds, they've got half courts or full basketball courts, but on page 51 and page 68, when we talk about skate parks, because that's obviously another addition, we don't mention the basketball courts in that. We only just talk about playgrounds or skate parks. So I just wonder whether we just need to look at that on those two pages.
Yes, we can take a look at that. Thank you.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Is there any definition around leash? And the reason I ask that is because with some of the retractable leashes going up to 5 metres, and I can see, if, for example, if we're talking about dogs in the inner city. I know on the shared pathway out on the peninsula and issues like that. The dog is on a lead, but it's a 5 metre long lead.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a definition, but I would refer back to the dog owner has to have the dog under control. Even if it's on a leash, it still has to be under control.
Okay, thank you. Then I circulated some questions yesterday about the, in regards to the number of dogs that can be exercised or run, and I talked about related it to professional dog walkers that are taking place, and the number of 6 dogs on a leash and 2 off leash. Have any other jurisdictions or councils around the country dealt with professional dog walkers, and if so, how?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Wellington have got a licence requirement for commercial dog owners, so they have to have a knowledge of the bylaw and the policy. They need to know where they can and can't take their dogs, and they can't have any offences or they'll lose their licence. And there are others that are currently looking at this option as well, which is Auckland, Christchurch and Waitaki, as far as we know. And Tauranga.
And so there is no licence or anything, because I know there is quite a difference between some of the professional dog walking groups and organisations. For example, I know the company that we use for our dog, they're all got education related to dog behaviour. So there's nothing like that in the paperwork or in the system.
No, there isn't.
And then under the bylaw proposed, what we're going out for consultation on, we're actually not taking these groups and actually identifying them separately. They're being lumped in with the general public.
That's correct.
The other question I've got is around the inner city living and the growth of that. Is the proposal around dogs being available to be on lead in George Street and Octagon and area, more the inner city areas, reactive to the growth in inner city living and the dogs at work growth?
Sorry, don't understand your question. Sorry, Councillor.
So over the last probably few years, there's been a growth in dogs coming to work with people, like Friday dogs at work, things like that. We've also got a lot more inner city living taking place, and with that brings pets. So I take it the change of approach that we're going out for consultation around dogs in the inner city is reacting to both those issues.
Sorry, yes, that's correct.
Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm definitely looking forward to not breaking the bylaw every time I walk my dog to work every morning. But in regards to page 41, 10.2, it refers to dogs weighing more than 8 kilograms and not allowed inside the boundaries of any small breed dog exercise area. So I take it you're defining small dogs by weight. So my example of a chunky border terrier or pug would have to go with the big boys next door if it was over 8 kilograms. And perhaps a greyhound that was under 8 kilograms or whatever, or whippet, would go into the small dogs. Is that correct?
To be honest with you, Councillor, it's a fine balance, and we're trying to enable the small dogs to have some area where they feel safe, and the owners don't have the big dogs worrying the small dogs. So we don't have scales. It's a subjective look. And if there isn't, at all times they must be under control. So if you had a big dog in there that was not only weighed 8 kgs, and it was aggressive, then we deal with that with the control issue.
So when you touch on control in a dog exercise area, you still have to have your dog under control because it's off a leash running around with all the other dogs.
Yes, you must have your dog under control. So you must be able to call it back to you and avoid any incidents occurring.
When my dog's having fun, he doesn't want to come back and hurry, I can tell you that much. But anyway, 11.1, on the same page, it says the owner or person in charge of a dog that is in a public place must carry and display a bag or other receptacle suitable for the removal of faeces. So you've got to have it on the outside. You can't put it in your pocket any longer. You've got to actually stick it on your head or pin it to your jersey or whatever. Is that correct?
This was it's in the current bylaw as well, yes, and it's correct. It should be visible. So some people carry those little holders with poo bags in them, or you could tie it on your lead, yes.
Never knew that. I never knew that actually existed. I've never been asked whether I've got a bag or not but when it's in my pocket. Thank you.
Councillor O'Malley.
Just back to the neutering of dogs. How often do we issue an order like that?
Not very often at all, very rare.
No, you're not, but I'll put you on.
And therefore, really, it comes down to the event, whether it's happened, how often it's happened for, the severity of the event, and then it's a rare. We really go all the way to say neuter the dog anyway, right?
Yes, what would normally happen is that we see a form of aggression occurring, and we would encourage the dog owner to get the dog neutered. We don't very often go to the point where we enforce it.
Lovely. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I've just got two questions. One you may not be able to shed any light on, but going back to Councillor Weatherall and his poo bags, are you able to shed any light on why they must be displayed rather than just you must use?
I think we're just trying to get so that the officers, when they drive past, if they see a dog being walked, they want to be assured that they're actually going to be picking up their dog poo. So if you've got a bag with you, you're more likely to pick it up.
Yeah. So ostensibly guilty until visibly innocent is ostensibly what we're saying by that, though. That's my curiosity, is it just seems a bit presumptuous to go, well, if you haven't got it on display, you clearly can't have one. Whereas a lot of people don't actually want to fling their bags around. So, no, the other question was, he says, hurriedly scrolling back to, leash. Going back to Councillor Wiley's question on leash, I'm wondering whether there's the ability to make it a little bit clearer, because the definition says means an adequate. The leash means an adequate restraint and may include a lead attached to a collar or harness that allows for the control of a dog when in a public place. And given, yes, technically they're on the end of a 5 metre rope, so they can haul it back in, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's under control. Certainly those of us who wander along the shared pathway and nearly collect dogs because they're on the 5 metre length. So I'm wondering whether there's the ability to put in appropriate somewhere, whether it's an adequate restraint that allows for the appropriate control of a dog, or something that makes it a little bit more obvious than just it's at the end of a 5 metre long rope.
Yes, we'd be happy to have a look at that.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ros. I've never envied your job. It's thankless. So a number of questions. I guess, like this bylaw or any bylaw, the central core element of it is having an acceptance and understanding of the public of the bylaw. And I think Councillor Weatherall highlighted that. I mean, I don't own a dog, but the core tenet of this bylaw is that dogs should be under control at all times. So understanding of the bylaw is core and central. Yeah. And in terms of what we do, I presume for the bylaw to work, it's very dependent on partners, whether that be the public or bureaucracies like DOC. So you work with DOC, and the example of the public would be the great work done by an individual actually to make sure there's no dog poo on the shared path out to Port Chalmers. So you are dependent on help.
Yes, we work very closely with DOC. Yes, and lots of other community groups if and when we're approached or we need to speak to them. Yes.
And I think I've asked you this question every year I've been around this table, and you're always far too polite with the answer, but I'll ask it again. And I say that as a daily commuter who sees breaches of the bylaw all the time, constantly. That's why I don't envy your job. Is there a lack of resource in your department to make sure we are on top of the multiple breaches I see and I know go on all the time?
Through the chair, I actually don't see that if we had another 10 officers, we'd be able to avoid a lot of the breaches. We can't be in all places at all times.
So, fully understand that. I mean, it's no different to the police. But, for example, if you had some other people, the area I'm thinking of where, for example, I see breaches all the time, if somebody could be placed there more frequently, say for 1 or 2 weeks in a row, I think psychology students would tell you if you have that situation, ultimately you will get on top of the problem, particularly in a town in Dunedin where it's a small community and word gets around.
Yeah, I understand the place that you're referring to, and we have increased signage. We have patrolled more, and I think we probably just need to take another look at it if we're hearing more complaints.
And are you aware of the fact those same psychology students would tell you of the theory of over signage? Often I have conversations with, do you know that I have conversations with people all the time by the sign they've just walked past telling me they haven't seen the sign? Yeah, okay. It's sort of a rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to come at this from the wildlife point of view about protecting wildlife. Do you keep any statistics on the number of attacks on wildlife by dogs?
It's usually DOC that refer to that, not us.
And my next thing is, speaking of DOC, I don't know if you know this, but in their initials, I guess, should be capital D, capital O, capital C, otherwise it's the Department of Corrections. I just noticed that I used to work with DOC, so that's how I noticed that. But going back to, I've got, what page is it? Page 83, I think. There were a lot of questions about Doctor's Point and whether dogs should be off-leash or on-leash, and it says this is a popular beach for wildlife, and I think this is the People's Panel, which was 50% current rules appropriate, and then the 40-something% that dogs should be on leash, and I've been the recipient of complaints around dogs attacking wildlife on that beach. But I don't actually see it mentioned in Doctor's Point, mentioned in the prohibited areas or any other areas. So if the question was asked, what is the response to the question?
So we spoke to DOC particularly about Doctor's Point, and they advised us that the new proposed dune rules, which must be on a lead through the dunes, and their ability to put temporary signs up in that area, they feel is very adequate for that, protecting that area.
And going back to DOC, I see that in the old bylaw there was 16 conservation/wildlife areas, Burns Park, Carries Creek, Deep Stream, Sea Reserve, Graham's Bush, Hyde, Middlemarch, Rail Trail, Goat Island, a number, and then another 6 tracks which are on the old list but not on the new list, and a lot of them appear to be Department of Conservation areas. And have they loosened their rules about dogs that have made these come off that list?
No, so they are now, we've recommended in the proposed bylaw, excuse me, that they will refer to DOC for those areas. However, if there is a crossover between DOC land and DCC land, we will mention it, such as the beaches.
So I'm just trying to get an understanding, because I think that people would probably go to our bylaw to see which areas they can and they can't. So are we excluding the DOC areas now from our bylaw?
Yes, DOC suggested that because their rules change from time to time, they would like to have that direct the dog owners to their website.
I'm just thinking practically about how that will work, because I think from a customer's point of view, because I know people with dogs, is that they would go to our website possibly to see the areas where they can go. So will those areas be shown in the maps, the DOC areas, or not, or will they be sent to the DOC website to look at those areas? Just from the customer's point of view, how easy is it to understand that?
So through the chair, we'll be directing people to DOC for the DOC areas. So on our website, we'll try and make it clear that for DOC specific areas, we cover that in our policy. We say at the front of our policy, note that any DOC areas go to the DOC website, so they can, that's their source of truth. However, there are some beaches where it is confusing and where the issues tend to arise that sometimes it's not all that clear who owns or has jurisdiction over what. So in discussion with DOC, we've agreed to include those beaches in our bylaw. And and the maps, the interactive map, which will be a guide, will show those beaches as prohibited.
I'm just a little concerned about it from the wildlife point of view, is the people's ability to understand about where they go and how they interact. So has it been looked at putting it all in one, or is it just because DOC changed their rules frequently and infrequently that this has arisen?
It's mainly because they changed their rules. So we've had things in the bylaw that are not relevant currently, that they've changed rules around. But we are looking at the interactive maps at the moment, and I think that we would need to include them in there as well.
And have DOC committed to better signage on the beaches, or the tracks and stuff that they oversee? Because I know budgets are being cut by central government, etc., etc. But have DOC committed to better signage so that people, when they go to those beaches, will?
I can't speak for DOC, but that has come up in discussion.
Councillor Gary.
Page 65, I just wanted a little bit of clarity on a couple of things. One is page 65, 1E, and I wondered what DOC's comments were around the suggestion of Taironi having dogs off-leash at one end of Taironi Beach, the proposal.
So they were quite comfortable with that, as long as we make sure the reserve is a no dog area. There is a wee separation within the land, and so it's south of the reserve area. Some people refer to it as Harrington Point. Very limited areas for dogs to be exercised in that part of the city. So that's why, and the DOC be consulted on all of this.
Sure. I don't mean to be cynical, but wildlife don't read signs, and I just wonder what happens if wildlife do come there. How would that be managed? Because could be disastrous if dogs are off leash. Is there the ability to deal with that situation?
Yes, I'd refer back to the Coastal Dunes proposed new rule, and also the temporary signage if we need to. There's quite a lot of tools that we can use.
Great, and I'm sure you have thought of it. I just needed clarity on that. And another matter mentioned was the bags being visible. Is that around efficient enforcement and the resources you have, being able to drive past the dog walker and see, oh yes, they've got a bag, that's going to be sorted? Is that what it's about? It's about your resources to deal with enforcement and do it efficiently.
Yes, that's definitely part of it. Yep.
Thank you. And finally, can you just explain to me, because I'm not a dog owner and I don't know how this works, but I have observed, and it's follow-up to Councillor Wiley's question about multiple dogs and dog walking and so forth. I've noticed a whole lot of little dogs, very cute, on a leash, on leashes, and one sort of master leash, I think, on the shared path. What's the expectation of the person walking the dog in a situation where you've got a cyclist coming from the other direction, and it's not a wide area when you've got a lot of dogs, what's your expectation of the management of that by the person walking the dogs? How does that work?
It always refers back to that they must be under control. So a person should be able to pass a dog without any risk to them or their safety.
Thank you.
Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you. I just had another question around dog faeces on the footpaths. And I've always got a poo bag in my pocket. I haven't got a dollar always, but I've always got a poo bag in my pocket. And it frustrates me that people are not looking after their own dog's faeces. And I don't know, in the offences here, I can't see the fine. What is the actual fine for not picking up?
It's an offence under the bylaw, and that would be it's either a $200 or a $300 fine if we can catch the person, literally catch them not picking up their dog poo.
It would be good to hurt them in their wallets and really up that fine. I don't think it's enough, quite honestly. And in regards to owners not picking up their dog feces, I notice, because I walk my dog morning and night and afternoon, but it always tends to happen at night. And it's not so bad through daylight saving, but I come along in the morning after I've walked at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and hello New Zealand, they do it and they don't pick it up, in the dark, so to speak. It's a real problem. There's nothing in here that could suggest people do. You say you're meant to have a poo bag visible. They should also have a light so that they can pick it up in the dark. It's not much fun picking up that material in the dark, and I suggest that's why they probably leave it behind.
In the proposed bylaw, we are recommending that people have some form of light while they're walking at night.
Councillor O'Malley.
I think it was answered right at the end of Councillor Barker's questions, but the interactive maps, are you planning on also including the dock sites on the interactive map so that people can then see and then like a different colour or something, so it's clearly not under the bylaw but under their rules? So
We would identify those as dock land, yes.
So they'll be able to go there and they go, okay, there is a piece of reserve. It does have rules on it, but they're not DCC rules, they're dock rules. Is that sort of?
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I'm such a positive person, but this item always makes me so bloody depressed. It's weird. I feel really down. A number of questions have come up from other people, and firstly, Councillor Weatherall again and Sophie, just around the wildlife and bad owners. We're growing up here, and I think we're growing up enough to admit that whatever we put in, whatever signs we do, whatever fines we put in place, bad owners are just going to be bad owners. That's, I'm sure, replicated all over the world. That's the case, isn't it? Whatever we do.
I think you could. I wouldn't agree or disagree, to be honest. I mean, there is always people that it's 5% of the population, I guess.
And I won't name names, but I'll come on to a bad owner that lives out in my part of the world whose dog does a poo every day in front of our house. And my wife has called the DCC.
Is there a question, Councillor?
There is a question, absolutely. And my wife calls the DCC, and the response from the DCC is that they require a photograph of that action in progress. Is that correct?
I think we need some form of evidence.
Do you think that's quite a ludicrous situation? And also my wife refuses to do that because the person who has the dog looks very aggressive and she doesn't want to put herself in danger. What would your advice to her be?
I'd recommend that she speaks to the team leader in Animal Services.
I think she has done. And I think it was Councillor Weatherall again who talked about fines, and it may be in here, so forgive me if I've missed that. But how often are fines being issued for the massive range of offences? And again, I'll use my boring example on the shared path where there's multiple daily breaches of the bylaw. How many people have been fined in the last year on the shared path for not having their dog on leads? I suspect it's 0.
I don't have that information in front of me, but if you'd like, I can send it to you if I think. Yeah.
Likely to be quite close to 0.
Again, I don't have that information.
I'd really appreciate getting that information. And on a final, more positive note, wouldn't you agree, because I think it probably is the way to go, and again, looking at other jurisdictions around the world, the best way for us to cure most of the issues we've raised today is by a lot of investment in education.
100%.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Just looking at the results from the early engagement survey, and it was positive to see there was 239 that engaged in it. But one of the things that I sort of reflected as I was going through the responses, looking at 60% of the people that responded were non-dog owners and only 40% were. Were you able to break down or have any statistics on the scale between the dog owners and the non-dog owners and their responses?
That was the stats for the People's Panel survey. We also did a web survey that we advertised and sent out very widely, and there were 383 responses to that, and in that survey 70% of respondents were dog owners, so we were very pleased to get a good representation of feedback from both dog owners and non-dog owners. And we did look a little at the differences between dog owners and dog owners, but I don't know that we could come up with anything categoric. I think the feedback from both surveys is a good representation of both groups.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone's asked questions. I have a couple of questions myself. Around the poo bags, now when I walk, I use recycled bread bags, actually. I've got a pile of them, and every time, I put them aside for that purpose, and I put them in my pocket. Or if I have a walking bag, I put them in that bag, and that's the way I carry them. Are you saying that if I'm doing that in future, that I could be fined for doing that?
What we're doing is trying to educate people to pick up their dog poo. If we find that we think that somebody's not picked it up, we can actually easily identify that they're not carrying one, or they haven't even got one in their pocket. It's another avenue to try and build more responsibility to collect their dog poo.
But can I just clarify, if I'm carrying, or anyone like me is carrying their poo bag in their pocket or in their carry bag, could they be fined for that? Because are you saying that they have to, sorry I interrupted you there, that they have to show the bag? Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're saying, but we've not issued an infringement since we've had it in there for 10 years. It's more an encouragement to carry the bags, and so we can visibly see them as well.
Is it possible that could be something reviewed? Because is it possible that the way that's worded could cause good dog owners to be penalised?
As I say, we haven't actually issued any infringement for that section of the bylaw, so we could have a look at it if you'd like us to. We could put an explanatory note in there if that would help. I think
that would be a good idea. Thank you, because I can imagine that is possible. I'm in question time, so yep. Thank you. My other question is around John Wilson Drive, and I asked this question and got an answer earlier, but I thought for the public, just to clarify, when John Wilson Drive is fenced off, I know a lot of people walk on there, and so can you just clarify for people what they're allowed on a lead or off a lead on that area when it's fenced off to traffic?
So when it's fenced off to traffic, it actually crosses right through a reserve. So we allow dog owners to have their dogs off leash.
Lovely. Thank you very much. No further questions? Wonderful. Well, you've had good interactions today. Wonderful. Okay, so getting that far, would someone like to move the motion? Or I'll move it. I'll move the motion. And is there a seconder? Councillor O'Malley, thank you. Right, thank you. All right, and we'll note, it should be up here. Could we get that up on the screen, please? Thank you very much, because it's quite a long one. Are you happy to take that as a block to note all those points, or do you want them taken separately? All together? Lovely, yep, I'm happy with them all together if everybody else is. Okay, so if you have a look at that for a minute, can you bring it down a little bit for us, please, Jenny? Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Right, okay. So everybody can see that. That's wonderful. Right, so I'll move that we note the motion, and I'm actually the mover, so I will speak on that. I'm happy to speak after everyone, but because I'm the mover, I'll speak first. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to speak on that, but I will wait to speak at the end. If anyone else wants to speak now, please. Okay, Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I did bring up the wildlife point of view, and I think that's really important. We've talked about people, we've talked about their dogs, the ability to exercise, etc. But one of the key things that comes back is I will keep saying the wildlife capital of New Zealand, and the increase of sea lions and hopefully penguins on our beaches in the complaints that we get. And that's why I asked the question about, do we keep stats of the number of attacks on wildlife? Councillor Gary brought up Tauroni Beach, and there was an example a few years ago where a fledged albatross actually landed on the beach. Just one of the young ones, and unfortunately some children were throwing stones at it. So it's not only dogs that chase wildlife, but also badly behaved children. So I think there are really sensitive areas, and I'm quite concerned about dock areas coming out of this list. And I think I brought up from the customer's point of view about confusion about where or not you can exercise your dogs and whether you're actually going to read the signs. I would love for us to have a one place of truth, because I think that people wouldn't necessarily consider going to the dock website, rather that the DCC has kind of got the control by law, etc. So I would like to see DOC, who are having their budget cut, spend some more money on signage, because I think anyone that's been to a beach and tried to find out the wildlife information, it's a bit slack around. I see they're reducing 130 roles, and I'm hoping that some of those don't impact on our local DOC people or on the budget here. So that's really my key focus on this, is the wildlife, and I hope that when we are doing the consultation, is that we do consult more with some of those wildlife groups as well. I think Penguin Rescue, etc., need to have a voice in this, because it's very important.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks to the team. I wasn't joking when I said I don't envy your jobs, and I've spoken on this issue lots and lots of times, and I'm one of those people who experience. I don't have a dog, but I do experience breaches of the bylaw every day, and I often spend a lot of time while I'm biking trying to think of solutions, but they're really hard to come by. The good news is the vast majority of people who are breaching the bylaw are actually really good people who are actually ignorant of just the fact that there's a bylaw. And I'll speak specifically to the shared path, where there's a rule for good reason, I think, because there's lots of activity going on there, where dogs are required to be on leads. I often stop and just try to have a really friendly conversation. I've only ever once been threatened with death, and most people are really responsive, and most people genuinely are not lying. They just did not know, and the team were really responsive actually. And when I put in a request for better signage, and it is really good signage down there now, but it's obviously not enough for everyone, and I do fear at some point, there's going to be a bit of a mangle there between, if you go to, and Councillor Wiley does have a point, the size of the lead seems to be getting longer and longer, and you can imagine an electric bike going at 35, 40 Ks, a long lead, a bunch of kids, and you've got a potential for quite a bit of injury and a sad outcome probably for the dog, which is a real shame. And I do know how hard it is to be everywhere all the time. In fact, it's impossible. So I think education that both educates the public but also gives confidence to the vast majority of good dog owners to be the police people themselves. Because I think if dog owners themselves are telling other dog owners that they haven't done something correctly, I think that's a good way forward. And I'll come on briefly to Councillor Barker's issue around wildlife. And it really does. It makes my heart weep, actually, when I'm at the Wildlife Hospital and we go round the back there, and the wards are often full of birds, and some of our most precious tonga species, actually, that have been, pretty much munted by dogs. And again, because a lot of dog owners, again, being the largely honest people they are, a lot of good dog owners whose dogs have attacked penguins, for example, will be the people who bring the penguins into the hospital, and they're perplexed because, go figure, and I think this is the case, and quite rightly, I think if I had a dog, every dog owner thinks their dog's the best dog ever, and I don't think there's any reason not to think that. But when your dog just leaps over the dunes for just 10 or 20 seconds, it can do a lot of damage, and I see that damage, and I see it in the death of of some of our most precious creatures. But again, how we do that is, I know, a long ongoing battle for the people at DOC. So, Councillor Barker, I don't know what the best solution is there above and beyond great investment in good education about what your lovely dog that you sit with on your lap watching Netflix in the evening can do when it leaps over the sand dunes. And finally, I just want to give a shout out. I mentioned it briefly in question times, but I want to give a shout out to some of the groups of people out there in the community that have taken things sort of into their own hands, but worked with our team here and DOC to try and do the right thing. And I'm thinking particularly of Antonia Wood out in my part of the world, who has a Pick Up Poo campaign. I mean, she's collected tons of poo. What a claim to fame that is over the years. But it really has improved the area in which I live in the West Harbour, because that path used to be laden with dog poo. So her work, and again with the cooperation of our team by putting in more bins and supporting her work, and through Keep Dunedin Beautiful actually, have created, given a good indicator of what we can do working together for better outcomes. I've got a lot more to say, but I won't say it in 31 seconds. Thank you.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. First off, a big bouquet to the staff in bringing this together. You know, it's one of those ones that the staff, and I think even some of the councillors who've been involved in the past, go, oh, we're doing this again. But, you know what, we've come a long way, and as the last two reviews have done, they've really tightened up a lot of the issues. From especially, I think it was 2015, 2016, where we had a very challenging process. I think the best thing that I've seen from this report is actually the depth of the early engagement. We had 377 people engaged back in December, and it was great to see that there were a good percentage of dog owners. And then we had the council's panel, people's panel, with 239 engaged. And it's good to see some of that early thinking and process that also will help shape what takes place. A lot of the other issues that I've raised through the questions, I'm not going to basically tackle again, but yes, I get Councillor Walker walking a dog on a 5-metre long lead, a retractable lead. Sometimes they're not always retractable, and sometimes they're often running. And then the versus a 2-metre lead or thereabouts. Poo bags, I think I've never thought we'd spend so much time discussing them. You know what? I would say 90% of dog owners are really good dog owners and are ticking all the boxes. In fact, I'd probably go 97-3, 97% of them. Maybe they don't always show their dog poo bags, but they actually have them with them, or, you know what, they are visible. The key thing is, for example, if we take Tomahawk Beach and see how that has actually worked very well over the last 10 years plus, there is a lot of self-policing takes place. Anytime you step on Tomahawk Beach and if there's wildlife, the other dog walkers will quickly tell you that there's wildlife, and they'll tell you what's going on and what's taking place. And the other thing is, if your dog is off and running and it's attacking or interfering with wildlife, trust me, there is a number of dog owners that are quick to give people the razz. Fortunately, we have not been in that situation, but I can tell you it does take place, and we've witnessed it. At times you turn up to Tomahawk Beach and actually there's poo bags tied to the fence, so anybody who's forgotten is when they got there, there's one for them to pick up, and there are dispensers in areas. But more than anything, I think this consultation process and going through this hearing process is going to require engagement, especially from dog owners. But it's actually going to be a lot simpler than we have in the past, and I think that's the important part of actually how councils come across and engaged and actually modified responses as we go along. We are not going to get it 100% right, but it is going to be up to the community to engage and for us to listen to them when that process takes place. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clearly there is a lot of ignorance around, and we've seen that around the table about the current bylaw, let alone the proposed one. And I don't think that's down to the education our staff have done. I think there's a responsibility on dog owners. But I want to pick up on what Councillor Walker was talking about, and thank you for those examples of the Wildlife Hospital, because I think people would be appalled if they knew that. But I want to turn my attention to children. I have very clearly in my mind, when my daughter was at primary school, a fluffy white child magnet that used to be at the front gate of the school, and the owners, of course, loved their dog, and the parents were standing there. The dog was under control, and the dog very suddenly leapt up and bit the child on the face. Now, that young man's really lucky he doesn't have terribly visible scars. They've healed over really well. He's now in his 20s. But I remember that incident particularly well, and I also remember the extraordinary work of the team at DCC around that dog and what happened consequently. They were outstanding. So I want to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that we have to keep educating people, and I take Ms McGill's comment around education, that education, we have to keep investing in education. That's really important. So a shout out to all the responsible dog owners in our community. I think the proposed changes are positive. And I note the adjustments around the shared path, and the comment that there aren't on the outer parts of the city dog exercise areas. So the shared path is one of those, and it's part of the enjoyment of seeing people. And we heard during the annual plan submissions, people walk their dogs late at night, and they're on the shared path during the day. And most dog owners are responsible and have their dogs under control. So there's just a few. I note the comment around the dock sites, and I trust that our staff will ensure that there are really clear links so that it's customer friendly. I know that you're on a mission to make things customer friendly in the customer and regulatory space, so I've no doubt that will happen with this too, as it's something that's very important to this city. Look forward to the rest of the process, and I think we're on a good trajectory here. Thank you for all the work that's done every day.
Thank you, Councillor Gary. Yes, and following on from that, I 100% agree that, and I thank the staff in that regulatory space that are looking at trying to make things more customer friendly. And I think one of the first things that has come up today, and that they've offered to look at reviewing, is the poo bag situation, because in my personal view, I think really if people were started in this bylaw, as I understand it, people can be fined for not showing their poo bags. When I'm a person who walks along with my dog with my poo bags in my pocket or in my walking bag, and I could just imagine if we started fining people for not showing their poo bag, we'd be labelled, red tape, bureaucratic, absolute nonsense. And I'd have to say I would agree to a degree. So I think to avoid that annoying every dog owner in town, it's really good to review that and take it out. And it sounds like staff are happy to look at that, which I think is great, because there's no point having things like that could annoy good dog owners. And that's not what we want. We want people to be able to enjoy being a dog owner, but do it in a sensible way. And I think that comes back on us too. We have to be sensible with our regulations. And when it's, things like that, to be honest, a wee bit silly. So another thing I think's come up again and again, and when I'm out walking, it is actually a valid point, something I hadn't thought of before, but is what Councillor Gilbert was referring to around the extended leads, is that I could see them potentially being quite a problem, actually quite a serious problem, when there's bikes that are going quite quickly past you, and if the dog was out quite a way, it's difficult to get them in fast enough, and it could occur an accident for the cyclist, as well as the dog could be crushed as well. But as an owner who had a we walk our dog a lot along the shared path, but our dog was attacked by a random dog off a lead who came and went straight for our dog's neck, and our dog's had quite a few problems since then on the fear that it might happen again. And so I just hope and put a call out to everyone that they do keep their dogs on a lead when they're on that shared path, or because it can cause a lot of problems. I think in areas like John Wilson Drive, it's fine and it's legal to have your dog off a lead. Often dogs enjoy it more because there's more space, but when you're in that sort of closed space and the dogs are quite close to each other, it is good if they're on a lead. So well done. There's been a lot of discussion on this. It's going to be a big bylaw, and we'll be announcing who'll be on that panel in our next council meeting, I believe. But I'd like to now declare the motion. I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? No? Okay, I declare the motion carried. Thank you, everyone, for your input. Now we're moving to trading in public places bylaw review. However, that's been a big debate. Sorry, I know staff are here, but I'd just like to have a 5-minute break for a recession if anyone needs to use the conveniences or anything. Just a 5-minute break in our meeting. Can I have a second to thank you, Councillor O'Malley? We'll be back in 5 minutes. Ms McGill and Ms Gray, please. And for those supersonic ears, we didn't have a recession, we had a recess, so thank you for that. Although some people would say we're in a recession, but anyway, we won't get into that. Right, so would you like to speak on your papers, or you're happy to take it as read?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take it as read and take questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I recall the trajectory of the e-scooter when they first arrived, and as we incorporated it into the bylaw, I was interested to know, because the landscape's changed over time and different operators and so forth. But on page 134, paragraph 18, it talks about evolving best practice and the evolving best practice. Can you tell us about what some of the changes are in that space?
Sorry, through the Chair, is that regarding e-scooters? So the e-scooter permit is currently up for review. It ends at the 30th of June, and we're in the process of looking at applications at the moment. So there is a range of options that are available.
What are some of the changes in best practices, what I'm interested in, for e-scooters?
You're testing my knowledge there. There's certain things like they've got cameras on them so that they can see if there's a hazard in front of the vehicle, and they can automatically slow them down. Some of them have got three wheels rather than two. Some of them are remote control from another city. So if you put it in the middle of the footpath, they can actually remote control it out of the way. There's alarms, lights. There's quite a range of options.
And what's the situation with, and I'm sorry I can't recall what it was called, something like geofencing, the areas that they could be in, restricting areas. Is that pretty widespread now across all of them?
Yes, they all have that technology to stop the scooters going into those areas.
Councillor O'Malley.
Just asking a question around tables and restaurants. Is that covered in this, or is that another bylaw that covers that?
Yes, that's covered within the conditions of the commercial use of footpaths. So sorry, I'll just elaborate. The bylaw looks at enforcing the permits. The conditions are written separately from the bylaw. So the conditions have to be applied. You have to comply with the conditions. The bylaw allows us to enforce it if you do not.
We got the answer to my next question, which is, so the fees are also sitting somewhere else, and then the bylaw just...
Yeah, the fees are in the fees and charges.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. Looking at page 143 in the number 7 application for permission, I'm curious, it says an application for a permit must be made in writing, etc., etc. What policing is undertaken to ensure that all traders have permits? Is it good faith? Is it waiting for the public to comment, or is there actually, if you like, for want of a better expression, policing going on?
It's probably a mixture of all of those things. So if we're aware, we will invoice. So people have to apply to put something on the footpath. So we get applications, and then we will invoice them each year for those. We also have staff that, if they observe a premises that's all of a sudden got tables and chairs, we will approach that operator and advise them they need a permit.
But I'm also referring to, because I'm assuming this also, my read is that it also covers mobile vendors, mobile traders, etc., setting up somewhere. So it's also around that. You're waiting for them to contact you to say, hey, by the way, I'm here, or?
That's if it's a mobile trader with regards to food, it's under the Food Act, and the conditions under the Trading in Public Places bylaw, the conditions refer to how they must operate on the street. If they must have a permit, they must comply with the parking, they can't obstruct public safety, all of those things. If they need a permit, a licence to operate under the Food Act, they must comply with that, and they must tell us before they operate. They must have a food licence.
Right. So again, we're back to the conversation we had earlier, that it's behovent on the person doing it to know the whys and wherefores and what they can and can't do.
There is information on the website that advises people what they must do. staff, if they become aware of somebody operating, they can do it on, they may see it on social media, or somebody may make a complaint. We will directly contact that person.
Thank you. And my last question, and it kind of goes a little bit to what Councillor O'Malley was saying, in terms of, are you able to give any indication as to whether there have been increased usage of the street table, more tables put up on the street now that George Street is done? It kind of was covered a little bit earlier, but...
Sorry, I can't comment on that at this point. I could find out for you if you want to.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. When we go out to, I guess, consult on this, well, we have suggested changes that we're thinking of doing in the bylaw. For example, I'm referring to 10.1, where we talk about pedestrian access in public places. We talk about not blocking footpaths, doorways, bus stops, blah, 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 but we don't mention cycleways. And I know, for an example, where somebody was blocking the cycleway and they said, well, what was the issue? There was nowhere where it talked about the cycleway, that they couldn't be in the cycleway.
So that would be in regards to the 2GP and the rules within that, and the public safety. I'm not an expert in that area, but I would suggest that if there's not a 3 metre clearance, then that is blocking, and it doesn't matter if it's a cycleway or a footpath or, that they can't do that.
I guess, does it need to be specified when we specify everything else? That was all.
We can look into that to make sure it's covered.
Councillor Benson Pope.
Thank you. I think I certainly am looking forward to it, but I think we all probably are, namely the increased activation of the spaces that we've created in George Street, and the same thing's going to happen in Bath Street shortly, and then we're going to move on to Princess Street. And I'm therefore concerned, it relates to the question I asked earlier, but this relates to the way the definition of a trading activity captures street performers. And I wonder if as I think we are, we're expecting retailers and others to finance, support, encourage activation on the street, whether it's street music or performance of some other kind. I'm wondering about this good sense or not of requiring a permit for that purpose, or at least could that be considered where the street performing definition, whether that should remain captured by the trading activity definition, because in most cases they're not trading. A street performer playing a violin or something ain't trading. They might be being paid to do it by a retailer or someone.
What is your question, Councillor?
Is that an issue?
So we have conditions for street performers, and they are required to comply with the conditions.
But they're captured by the definition of a trading activity which requires a permit. Would you look at that, please? Thank you.
Yes, we can look at that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley.
I just noticed in the definition of public place you've got cycle track, but you might want to use the NZTA definitions because it's cycleway and cycle path. And then sort of to that question, obviously the roadway's there as well. How do we deal with, because I've seen one activity in Mosgiel where it looks like a car yard. How do you deal with people who've got like 50 cars parked down the road? Is this the bylaw that does that?
No, that's not within this bylaw.
Or do we have any mechanism dealing with trading on the road?
I'd have to ask for advice on that, Councillor. I'm not sure of the answer.
Just going to the definition of public space and it says road, street or footpath. So is the bylaw intended for mostly for the footpath, but not anywhere else then?
Sorry, I actually don't know the answer to with regards to the example that you've just given. I'd have to come back to you on that.
Any further questions? No? Okay. All right. Would someone like to move the motion? Okay, well, that being the case, I'll move the motion. And is there a seconder? Councillor O'Malley, thank you. Right, we'll have the motion put up on the screen here in a second. Oh, hiccup there. I can read it out. Oh, got it? Lovely. And here we go. So can everybody see that? Great. Okay. All right. Are there any speakers to this motion? No speakers? Okay, that being the case, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? Carried. We'll move now to number 11, Customer and Regulatory Issues and Trends Report. Welcome back, Mr Henderson, Building Services Manager, Ms McGill, our Manager of Compliance Solutions, Ms Brown, our Customer Services Manager, who is new to the seat. Is Ms Brown here? Yep, lovely. And Mr Worthington, our Resource Consent Manager, please. Lovely. Thank you very much. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this paper before we start?
Happy to take any questions, thank you.
Lovely, great, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. Just a quick one, and for clarity, on page 150, talking about the phone call response times reduced from 5 minutes 11 in December to 3 minutes 49 in April. Is that how long it took for the query to be, a hi, welcome to, thanks for your call, or was it on time on hold?
Kia ora, that's so the person connecting gets the welcome to DCC, and then they wait for the next available person to take that call, and that's the time period that they're waiting for.
Cool. So time on hold. Can you remind me what the target is from the time that they're connected, but then you're however many in the queue? What's the time, the expected time or the target time frame for that?
Historically, that has been 20 seconds.
Can I just clarify, did you just say it's the target goal is for 20 seconds someone will answer the phone when we ring customer services?
Yes, it has been.
Right.
And we do achieve that at different periods throughout the day, but this is the average throughout the peaks and troughs as well.
So how often would you achieve 20 seconds?
I don't have that information with me currently.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, failing that for no other questions. Well, thank you very much to the staff. Thank you. Now, so I would like to move the motion. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lucas. And I'll move that the committee notes the Issues and Trends report. Given I'm the mover, I'm not going to speak on that today, so I'm going to put the motion, but others can speak. Yes, so Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to highlight the considerable advances in the trends. I was noticing the improvements in time frame, and I know it was because of the extraordinary busyness around building consents, but the 10 days for Code of Compliance certificates, which was 11 days, but prior to that, and if you have a look at the graphs, you can see some of the peaks in that. They're quite considerable. I recall well when it was a great deal more than that, but staff have made real advances in that regard, and also on inspections. So I just draw everyone's attention to the BCA biennial accreditation audit, and the comment. The report noted the BCA as low risk, and the program manager building at IANZ noted it as an excellent performance, and I think we should compliment staff on that.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, that being the case, I'm now going to put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Okay, any items for consideration by the chair? No items. All right, now I will finish with a karakia whakamutanga. I will now, okay, kia tau te rangi Māori, ki ranga I ngā iwi OTO. Let your peace reign on all the people of the world. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to the staff, and thank you to the